Okay. What I'm going to do is give you a very brief overview of the work we've been doing in the Netherlands, and this is going to be really brief. We've been working on, let's say, a 3-stage research program where we tried to develop scenarios for automated driving. We developed 4 scenarios, I'll come to that later, which are 4 different worlds that may appear, and we especially looked at the societal consequences of automated driving. And now we're in the process of developing the transition paths towards these future worlds, and to take a look at the policy perspectives which may arise in each of these worlds. What I'd like to do is give you a somewhat background idea about these transition paths we are now contemplating. The first thing, of course, always is to take a look at what is automation, and probably everybody in the room already knows this SAE levels of automation, so I'll be very brief on these. Just to say that we took, let's say, 2 levels together mainly. You've got level 0 and 1, 2, which are in the world where the human driver has to monitor the driving environment, so the system is helping the human driver, whereas in level 3 and 4, the system is in control and the driver has to be present at level 3 and 4 to assist or to take over if anything goes wrong. Well, I'm not going to go very deeply into these things, but what we did was we took the level 3 and 4 together as a, let's say, as a world where you may say that automated vehicles are able to drive on a highway in normal traffic. There's not on separate lane, but on normal traffic. But the driver still has to be present so as to see if anything goes wrong or if the system asks for help. These are the 4 scenarios. There are 2 axes. One is the level of automation. Level 5 is full automation, where you don't need a steering wheel or any brakes or anything like that in a car. People are just drinking wine or reading. And in the other part, level 3 and 4, the driver still has to be present and there has to be a steering wheel to be able to take control if necessary. On the vertical axis, we've got sharing. We've got a high degree of sharing on the upper part and a low degree of sharing on the lower part. So when you look at these 4 worlds, and I start on the right with full automation, on the lower part there is somebody in its own private, fully automated cocoon, driving to where he or she would like to go, drinking wine or reading or doing things like that, but it's a private vehicle. Whereas on the upper level, on the right, mobility as a service has arrived, and people are renting cars or having mobility services brought by them by fleet owners who own a lot of different cars and just provide the service anybody asks them for. On the other part, on the left part, there is a world where, let's say, technology hasn't progressed to the fact that automated vehicles are able to drive in cities, in particular in, let's say, the European cities, where you have the mixed modes and a very complex combination of all kinds of people in very narrow streets. So there, the driver still has to be present. On the bottom part, it's a private world where people are driving their own private vehicles, where on the upper part, on the left, you see a world of multimodal and shared automation where people have a preference for sharing, the sharing economy developed, and people are also have a preference for sustainability. So there's much more public transport there and much more combined trips. Well, this is just a very brief overview. I've got a few booklets with me which give these scenarios in more detail. What I'd like to do now is take a look at what we are now doing, and that's looking at the transition path. And therefore we made a very complex picture. I always like complex pictures. I'll give you a few ideas here. Here are the scenarios I just described. So on the right we still see the 2 worlds, the private and the mobility as a service world. On the left, the letting go on highways and the more let's say, public transport-oriented world and a more sharing-oriented world. There are all kinds of cars in this picture, which indicate the level of automation. So the red cars are level 1, then the yellow cars appear at level 1, 2, then green cars appears on level 3, 4, and ultimately on level 5 we have reached full automation and you don't need any steering wheels anymore. We don't think that it will be a very easy trip on this transition path. We've got 5 main challenges for transition, which I'll come to later. And we've got a timetable, and the timetable says that it may take quite some time. We've got a fast track, which ends in about 2065, and we've got a slow track, which ends somewhere beyond 2100, before the level 5 will be present. So it's a somewhat different picture than you hear somewhere in the press or in discussions once in a while. Well, we are now about here, starting to experiment, starting to think about level 1 and 2 cars, cars where people are helped by the system, lane keeping assistance. These cars are coming up in the real traffic now. The next stage will be a stage where we are thinking about communication between cars, cooperative driving. So does a car have to communicate with another car, vehicle to vehicle, or to the infrastructure, vehicle to infrastructure, or to the cloud? In what way will cars have to be able to communicate so as to reap the full benefits of automatic driving at close distances? Well, then we have got 2 paths. The one is the path where sharing flourishes, so that's the path where the sharing economy develops and people start really sharing all kinds of things together, but also trips and cars. This requires really a substantial shift now from the current situation where we still see a very low rate of sharing vehicles. In this world, also government invests in public transport on separate tracks where vehicles are able to move separately, and that may appear rather quickly. This eventually evolves towards the multimodal and shared automation world that I just described. And the next step will be, how do we reach level 5? And here is a big challenge, because the main challenge is how will automated vehicles be able to drive in our cities, especially in the European cities. So that depends a lot on the technology. If technology is really moving fast and level 5 is appearing quite quickly, perhaps this 4th step, which we call urban dilemma, can be skipped. But on the other hand, it may also be that it takes quite a lot of time before technology develops to such a high level that we are able to have fully automated vehicles within our cities, and therefore it may take quite some time, and we are challenged then how to deal with semi-automated vehicles, level 3, 4 vehicles in our cities. This is something I'll come to a little bit later. Well, ultimately, we're in the situation where mobility as a service has arisen. Fully automated vehicles are present. Fleet owners are able to provide all kinds of services. If you pay a lot, you can have your private vehicle and drive you somewhere. If you pay somewhat less, you share it with a number of people. You can ride at different times and places, and it's all fully automated. Well, the other part is where the private car evolves. And people don't have a preference for sharing. People prefer to have their own cars. People prefer to live within their own private cocoons and pimp their cars. It's a kind of a Top Gear world for me. And here you see that, of course, developing higher level cars, especially the cars on level 3, 4, when you have full cars that are able to drive on a highway by themselves, may take quite some time. The stock of cars, of course, is some 15 to 20 vintages, so it takes 15 to 20 years to replace the entire stock of cars. But if you're able to, let's say, remodel them, if you're able to adjust them, it may go a little bit faster. Anyway, it will take quite some time. Ultimately, we arrive in the letting go on highways world, where cars are able to drive by themselves on highways, but not in cities. and the driver still has to be supervising. Ultimately, here we go to the world where there is a lot of highly developed level 5 fully automated cars, but people own them by themselves, and that means, of course, that people park them by their houses, and we don't solve the parking problems that we solve in the upper world. And there is another option here, and that's a byway. It's a one-directional byway from the fully private world to the sharing world. It may very well be that once fully automated vehicles have arrived, that the services provided by mobility services are that cheap and that interesting that people start switching from having their private cars towards mobility as a service at a very late stage. So there are actually, in our perspective, two ways to arrive at the mobility as a service world where you have a lot of sharing. It may be from the current situation through the upper path, but that is quite a way. It may also develop much more later in time. Well, we've got a number of challenges. I'll go to them very briefly. These are the 5 challenges which are present. In our current state, where we have cars which are assisted by all kinds of systems, we may wonder whether man and machine go together very well. Is this the best of two worlds, where we can say that the human driver is still very knowledgeable and very able to handle very complex traffic situations, where the technology supports the driver, and we reap quite a lot of benefits from automated driving already in that situation? Or are we coming into a situation where if the driver has to be supervising an automated system, but he may doze off, the driver loses attention, accidents appear, and this man-machine world isn't that nice, and it may, let's say, hold back a transition to some degree. The other part is cooperation between cars. Is it the holy grail, where we can say, well, if cars communicate, they can drive at very short distances, they have an efficient road use, high safety, less congestion, and a lot of less carbon, as everybody says? Or is it a bridge too far, and does it demand quite something from sensor and software, which have to be very reliable? You should not have any cars that are to be hacked. Privacy issues are very relevant there. So here also things may go fast, or things may be held back by technology. The third part is mixed traffic. When you really come into a highway where you have a number of automated vehicles which drive entirely by themselves, together with people who are still riding their own vehicles, how will that move out? Will it solve itself? Where consumers say, well, that's nice, we have a number of automated vehicles, they drive very easily, so we just adjust, and we have a very steady traffic flow, and we'll be very, very glad. But it may also be that it's going to be some kind of a showstopper, where all kind of a maverick will be very interested in seeing to what extent it can really outsmart the automated vehicle on the highway, or people are getting frightened by automatic vehicles which are very close to the back of their cars. So mixed traffic also poses a challenge to transition. Then the urban world. What if really automated vehicles are able to drive by themselves on the highway, but not yet in our cities? So technology is not that far developed that it is able to drive in Amsterdam, where on every corner there are 3 bicycles and 5 pedestrians crossing the road, and you have to be very careful as an automated vehicle. Well, then that poses a challenge for our urban planners, in the sense that if it really takes 10 or 15 or 20 years before technology is able to solve that, we might start contemplating whether we have to adjust our cities, and we have to adjust infrastructure to be able to have those automated vehicles go deeper into our cities. But that, of course, takes a lot of money and effort. Or do we have to say, well, the driver has to stay in control, the technology perhaps is nearby, or we just aren't willing to pay the price, and we say that it takes quite some time before this stage has been completed. That's the fourth dilemma, and the fifth this I skipped. The fifth transition challenge is the self-driving city. And here we get the mixed mode problem. If a self-driving car is really able to drive by itself, you don't need a steering wheel, you don't need any brakes or something like that, and contemplate Amsterdam, where there are a lot of bikes, there are a lot of pedestrians. How will that interact? Will it be some kind of a contested space where every biker, that's the way I travel, usually go to my work on a bike. If the traffic is red, well, it's an interesting issue, but I usually cross it. If every automated vehicle stops when you cross a red light, then you don't have to be scared as a bicycle, as a cyclist, or as a pedestrian. But the issue, of course, will be that the automated vehicle won't move any meter anymore. The entire car traffic will come to a stop. And that's really a challenge in cities like Amsterdam and the European cities in general. And that may be a very difficult situation, and we may have to contemplate about issues how to adjust that. Are there any issues how to do that? We can have physical separation, but that's very costly, and that's actually what you don't like in a fully automated situation. Are there any technology solution? Does any automated vehicle has a camera on board which automatically finds every, let's say, any pedestrians or bicyclists which crosses a red light? Maybe the case in that time. Or do we have a pushy vehicle which starts pushing when everybody is blocking it? Or is it a matter? Will it be a matter of culture where everybody says, well, we appreciate that we have both automated vehicles and bikes, and we are neatly working together? I'm not sure whether that will be the case. So taking it all together, looking from the perspective of transition, we think it will take quite some time before the transition towards fully automated vehicles will be there, both because technology has to adjust substantially. Stephen has written quite a lot about that. Consumers have to adjust, the government has to adjust regulation. It's a kind of a general purpose technology which has all these things interacted. The stock of cars has to adjust, 15 to 20 vintages, and the infrastructure may be involved as well. We think that the path towards sharing may be there, but for the present it really requires a major shift on the short and medium term, because sharing is still very, very limited nowadays. And it may be probably more on the long term where we go to fully automation. And I've identified, let's say, 5 main challenges in transition: man-in-machine, cooperative driving, mixed traffic on highways, the city infrastructure, and how to deal with a self-driving city. That's it. Thank you for your attention.
I'm sure you know, has announced it'll have a self-driving taxi on the market in 2021. Other OEMs have made similar announcements in the same time frame. Your roadmap says that really self-driving taxis are decades into the future. Are these two incompatible perspectives, or can you square that circle?
Well, I think what we're trying to do is look at a situation where society has been fully adjusted to that. So there is not just 1 or 2 self-driving taxis, but there are abundant. And we think that the step from, let's say, a few cars and a few experiments towards, let's say, the society being filled with these kind of cars, that takes a lot of time, because then you come into the field of interaction and all kinds of societal issues.
Yeah, I have a quick question on your slide number 4. At the very beginning, you had this X and Y axis. And I was just wondering if you're thinking about reperforming the scenarios with the Z axis of electrification. So you would have the scenarios along the electrification pathway, and then that would make your complex picture even more complex.
That would be nice. That would be nice.
For electrified automated vehicles. So if you could comment on that, and then the question is just, you highlighted the challenge there about perhaps people losing faith in technology. But if they're electrified automated technologies along your spectrum and the automation fails, people might blame the electrification. So there could be misplaced blame in consumer culture. And if you could comment on that.
Yep, I think you're right. We didn't look into electrification specifically. It's a very interesting issue within, let's say, automated vehicles. We don't think that electric driving will be, let's say, a showstopper on the developments we've been sketching, but it may certainly be, let's say, elaborating on the issue and deepening the issue when you look at electric cars. So we We didn't look at it, but I've read some things about it, of course, and there are also people saying, well, the electric car will be a power cell near to your house, and there's a lot of potential there, indeed. Yeah.
Thank you.
We have to
Running
start.
a little bit long here, so I think we're going to want to
Okay.